Hello, everybody, again. It's great to see all of you. And thank you for your patience with the technological glitches, but they're inevitable. And Rhonda, our resident expert with Zoom, has obviously ironed everything out, so we should just be fine. Anyway, it's great to see you back. I see so many familiar faces as I'm kind of scrolling through the gallery. And I was so touched last time. I was so moved last time when we met, a couple of weeks ago, by your passionate commitment to the program, and by how deeply you sense the important role that you're playing in the BookMates' lives. And it was really, as I said to Rhonda afterwards, I got so much more of a sense of who you are after all these many years. And again, your how deeply important is the work to you. You know, and I was thinking today, when Rhonda a few minutes ago used the word that she thought that this would be a meaningful program today. And that's how I feel too, because I think that there is a particular meaningfulness to today's second Zoom session because of all the painful times that we've been going through as a country lately. And that has made all kinds of fractures and inequities and disparities declare themselves so dramatically. And I think all that, those painful realities have underscore and lend a certain urgency to the work that we do as bookmates. And you may be wondering why. Well, I think, and we've talked about this at many of the training sessions, that it's painful for us to acknowledge, but it's such an important reality and truth for us to acknowledge that so many of the little ones that we're working with are growing up in poverty. And poverty delivers powerful whammies. Whammies that undercut and compromise kids' ability to feel good about themselves. Kids' ability to feel that they have a strong, hopeful future ahead of them. So I thought what we would do today, again with special, I think that has special urgency given all that has gone on, that we focus today on specific things that we already do and specific things that we perhaps don't do, but we can do to help students tap into a strong inner sense of self. Because without that strong inner sense of self, kids don't, life is so hard from them anyway, that without a sense of self-worth, that they aren't capable of grabbing onto the opportunities that do, in fact, limited though they may be, the opportunities that do, in fact, come their way. So I thought, as last time, that I do the same thing as I did last time. Since you can't bring the read aloud experience to your kids, to your bookmates, I'm going to once again bring the read aloud experience to you. And we'll use the piece that I read to you as kind of a springboard for our discussion and for the activity. So I'm going to read you a piece by Maya Angelou. And it's from Maya Angelou's absolutely stunning 1968 autobiography, I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings, and I bet many of you have read it. It's just an evocative, powerful piece of writing. But let me give you a little background about Angelou so that provides a context for the piece that I'm going to be reading. Angelou's parents separated when she was 6, and she and her younger brother Bailey were shunted back and forth across the country all alone on a train from one relative to another. Again, she was 6 or 7 at the time, which in itself is an absolutely terrifying and traumatic experience. She and her little brother Bailey finally ended up in Stamps, Arkansas, which was a rigorously, ferociously segregated community. And she ended up living with her grandma, who she called Mama. And then life settled down for her for a bit, except a horrifying thing happened when she was 8. She was raped by a family friend. And she withdrew and closed down so much that she didn't talk for a full year. She was voiceless for over 12 months. Until one magical day, she meets an extraordinary woman, Mrs. Flowers. And then I'll let Angela tell you what happens next. So again, I'm reading from my Angela's autobiography or memoir, I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings, which in itself is an extraordinary title. And the title of the piece that I'm going to be reading is called Resurrection. Resurrection. For nearly a year after I was raped, I socked around the house and the store, the school, and the church like an old biscuit, dirty and inedible. Then I met, or rather got to know, the lady who threw me my first lifeline. Mrs. Bertha Flowers was the aristocrat of black stamps. She had the grace of control to appear warm in the coolest weather, and on the Arkansas summer days, it seemed that she had a private breeze which swirled around and cooled her. She was thin without the taunt look of wiry people, and her printed dresses and flowered hats were as right for her as denim overalls are for a farmer. She was our side's answer to the richest white woman in town. In fact, her skin was a rich black that would have peeled like a plum if snagged, but then no one would have thought of getting close enough to Mrs. Flowers to ruffle her dress, let alone snag her skin. And she wore gloves too, all the time, white gloves. She was one of the few gentlewomen I've ever known, and she's remained throughout my life the measure of what a human being can be. One summer afternoon, sweet milk fresh in my memory, Mrs. Flowers stopped by at Mama's door. Again, Mama is Maya Angelou's grandma. Another woman of Mrs. Flowers' health and age would have been expected to carry the paper sacks home in her hand. But Mama said, "Sister Flowers, I'll send Bailey up to your house with these few things." Mrs. Flowers smiled, her slow, warm smile. "Thank you, Mrs. Henderson, but I prefer Marguerite." Marguerite was Maya's given name. "My name was beautiful when she said it. I've been meaning to talk to her anyway," Mrs. Flowers said. Mama said, "Well, that's all right then. Sister, you go on up and change your dress. You go into Sister Flowers." What on earth did one put on to go to Mrs. Flowers' house? Certainly not a house dress. I chose my best school dress. "How nice you look, Marguerite, in that dress. That blue is most becoming on you," Mrs. Flowers commented when I returned from my room. And off the two of us went to her home. There was a little path along the rocky road along the way, and Mrs. Flowers walked in front, swinging her arms and picking away over the stones. She said to me, "I hear you're doing very good schoolwork, Marguerite, but that's all written. The teachers report that they have trouble getting you to talk in class." Now, no one is going to make you talk, possibly no one can. But bear in mind, language is man's way of communicating with his fellow man, and is language alone which separates him from the lower animals. Wow, that was a totally new idea to me, and I would need time to think about it. "Your grandma says you read a lot. every chance you get. That's good, but not good enough. Words mean more than what is set down on the paper. It takes the human voice to infuse them with the shades of deeper meaning. I memorized that part about the human voice infusing words. It seemed magical. She said she was going to give me some books and that I not only must read them, I must read them aloud. She suggested that I try to make a sentence sound in as many ways as possible. We continued walking along until we got to her home. The odors in her house surprised me. Somehow I had never connected Mrs. Flowers with food or eating or any other common experience of common people. It must have been an outhouse too, but my mind couldn't entertain that possibility. The sweet scent of vanilla met us as we opened the door. I made tea cookies this morning, Marguerite. You see, I planned to invite you for cookies and lemonade so we could have this little chat. The lemonade is in the icebox. Let me go get it. When she returned from the kitchen, she said, "Have a seat, Marguerite, over there by the table." She carried a platter covered with a tea towel. Although she warned that she hadn't tried her hand at baking sweets for some time, I was certain, like everything else about her, her cookies would be perfect. They were flat, round wafers, slightly browned on the edges and butter yellow in the center. With the cold lemonade, they were sufficient for childhood's lifelong diet. Remembering my manners, I took nice little ladylike bites of the edges. She said she had made them expressly for me and that she had a few in the kitchen that I could take home to my brother Bailey. As I ate, she began the first of what we later called my lessons in living. She said that I must always be intolerant of ignorance, but understanding of illiteracy. That some people, unable to go to school, were more educated and even more intelligent than college professors. She encouraged me to listen carefully to what country people call mother wit, that in those homely sayings were couched the collective wisdom of generations. When I finished the cookies, she brushed off the table and brought a thick, small book from her bookcase. The book, A Tale of Two Cities, I had just read recently myself. She opened the first page of The Tale of Two Cities, and I heard poetry for the first time in my life. It was the best of times. It was the worst of times. Her voice slid in and curved down through and over the words. She was nearly singing. I wanted to look at those pages. I needed to look at those pages. Were they the same that I had read? Or were there notes, musical notes lined on the pages as in a hymn book? Her sounds began cascading gently. "How do you like that?" she asked me. It occurred to me that she expected a response. The sweet vanilla flavor was still on my tongue, and her reading was a wonder in my ears. I had to speak. I said, "Yes, ma'am." It was the least I could do, but it was also the most. "There's one more thing, Marguerite. Here's another book, my favorite, a book of poems. I want you to take this book and memorize one poem. Next time you visit, I want you to recite that poem for me." On that first day, I ran down the hill and into the road home to Mama. I was liked, and what a difference it made. I was respected, not as Mrs. Henderson's grandchild or as Bailey's sister, but for just being me, Marguerite Johnson. I didn't question why Mrs. Flowers had singled me out for attention, nor did it occur to me that Mama must have asked her to give me a little talking to. All I cared about was that she had prepared tea cookies for me, that she had chilled lemonade for me, that she had read to me from her favorite book. Sensing all that, I was forever changed. And that's the piece.
Well, Judy, you are a miracle, number one. You're so right on target with everything that's happening in today's world. And what might be a solution, should be a solution. It does take someone, and in Maya Angelou's life, even her grandmother was that someone who arranged for her to have this, if she did arrange for her to have this wonderful experience. And to me, the putting faith in somebody is tantamount to elevating them to anything that they want to be. And that's what I heard in your reading of that. It was beautiful. And I really, really wish it could have been read to the whole wide world, because I think that's what's missing in today's, I'm not talking about the virus, I'm talking about the Black Lives Matter. I think it relates to that so strongly, because it takes someone to have the idea that you can do better.
Absolutely. Other comments? Audrey, I love the word faith, definitely. That belief in you.
Judy, I felt like I was listening to a wonderful rabbi or priest or whatever as you read, because it is the whole concept of what religion should be. Help somebody, treat them the way you want to be treated, that kind of thing. It was wonderful.
Oh, great. Thank you. Yeah, Jean,
Yeah, I just thought it was just so sweet. And I read this book many years ago, maybe in college, I don't remember when, but picturing little Marguerite eating the little cookies, gingerly on the edges of the cookies. And I picture her in the chair, maybe swinging her legs and just being so happy to have that extra attention. And it reminded me of my mother's oldest sister, my Aunt Ange, who I loved to visit her. And I had the same feeling with her, just that unconditional love. She was my favorite aunt. It's just giving a child that extra attention to let them know that they're special and that someone really cares about them.
She made that change for her. She made the change by just making her feel that I'm important. You're reading to me. These words are meant for me.
yes, exactly.
And I felt the same way when I read it many years ago. It was just such a poignant moment that, my gosh, that's for all of us. And that's how I feel when I read to the children.
Yes, I had read the book some time ago, but I didn't remember the details that you read to us. But I think what I found so important is the beauty of spoken language. And some things have to be heard.
Mm-hmm.
And this is what Maya discovered, Marguerite. And I think as the story went on, she started reading and reciting poetry. And I think that was the first speaking that she did, was with poetry.
And of course, why was it so important for Mrs. Flowers to focus on the importance of the spoken word? If a child was having trouble with reading, she would have had a different focus. But why?
The child wasn't speaking. And in the story, what I remember is the reason she wasn't speaking is because she had spoken out against her molester.
That's right.
And bad things happened to him.
Absolutely.
She felt guilt or just felt very bad that because she spoke, bad things happened.
That's an excellent point. There were two reasons why she stopped speaking. When children suffer that kind of trauma, as we know, they tend to draw inward anyway and wall themselves off. And children don't often, generally, tell the terrible things that happen to them. They keep them inside. But then the other point was exactly, she did actually tell the family a little bit after, almost half a year later, as I remember. And I think the man was killed. I think the community galvanized themselves against him. And she felt, therefore, when children are traumatized, when they're abused, they tend to blame themselves, right? We know that psychology. So now she has two sources of gnawing guilt that she's having to deal with. Number one, that she's somehow responsible for the rape, and number two, that she was responsible for the damage and harm that came to the man who raped her. So she has the voicelessness, and if you're voiceless, you're powerless. You have no agency in your life. She basically had given up. She had no faith in herself. She had no faith in the world, and that's what Flowers, restores to her. Not surprising, the piece is called. Do you remember what I said the title of the piece was?
I know why the
Resurrection.
I know what sings.
Resurrection.
Yeah. You remember the first thing when I love this part, when she's trying to figure out what is she going to wear to the house, and she puts on the dress. She comes out of her room, and do you remember the first thing that Mrs. Flowers says? When she sees
Color, about the color.
That's right. She compliments. And we've talked a lot about compliments. We'll talk more about it later on today, too. We've talked in various training sessions about the importance of complimenting your kids. I love your sneakers. Oh, your hair looks so cute today. Oh, that's a great color. That red shirt looks just terrific on you. Okay.
What Mrs. Flowers did for Marguerite was specific to Marguerite. She arranged this little lemonade party for her. She made it beautiful with the tea towel over the cookies. She knew that Marguerite had lost her voice, so not only did she read to her, first she encouraged her that the word is important, you must speak. But instead of just encouraging her, she read to her. She showed her the beauty of poetry, and she gave her something of hers to go home and read. She was specific to Marguerite. She saw to all of her needs. And if it was a little boy who maybe fell off a bicycle and was afraid to walk, she would have handled that differently. But this was so specific to Marguerite. Maya.
Terrific. Absolutely. Exactly.
Yeah, and she read Tale of Two Cities before she even read this poem, and it was something that Marguerite had already read. One would have read it straight as a book, and she read it and made it sound like poetry. And she didn't even recognize that it was the same. I mean, she knew it was the same story, but didn't realize that words could sound the way she was then hearing them. That excited her right away. She said, oh, are there notes on the pages? They're music. Is there something there for her that she didn't see? And that excited her right away.
Exactly.
I thought it was just beautiful, the circuitous route that she took, that she must have thought out ahead of time, Mrs. Flowers. She didn't just say, okay, why aren't you talking? What can you tell me about? The way I think people would tend to do. She just kind of, it evolved. She just kind of drew it out of her by making her want to read the poetry and probably want to come back and read it to her. It came from the child, not from the adult.
To coin an oft-used and overused phrase in education, this is student-centered. This is child-centered approach to opening them up in education. Definitely. So I think you were abuzz with all kinds of wonderful ideas. And again, I think some of what you've been talking about does shed a light on the importance of stuff that we do, and I think does point the way perhaps to things that we might do even more of. So what I'm going to do is we're going to break out into groups. Well, I bet you had lively sessions filled with creative, interesting ideas. I can see some heads shaking, so that's great to hear. So I think what we'll do, again, each group got a different question, although the questions are all related. So I'm going to tell you first, we'll hear from the first group. First group will give their talk in general about the kinds of things that they talked about in response to the question. But anybody from another group or from the same group pipe in too. Again, the questions are all kind of related. They're all related in terms of strategies, techniques, approaches to make kids feel good about themselves, to see themselves as doers and accomplishers and people, kids who have faith in their futures. So, okay, so we're going to hear from the first group. Let me tell you what the first group's question was, the following. What specific things can you say or do to show your bookmates you like them and think they are special? What specific things can you say or do to show your bookmates you like them and think they are special?
Okay, that was our group, my group. Yes, some of the things we said were to find books that they like, that they're interested in, so that'll, spark some excitement for them. And some bookmates said that they read, she'll read two separate kinds of books, one set of books for one bookmate and another set for the other child. And Judy had mentioned to ask what they like and try to really get to know them. And I do the same thing. I have little questions that I actually ask my bookmates when I first meet them, kind of like a get to know you kind of thing. I tell them a little bit about myself, and then they tell me some things about themselves. And also to learn about their family, ask about brothers and sisters. What does your dad do? Or about family members. And and also to find what their spark is. Some children may be good at art, and somebody says their bookmate had a great sense of humor. So that way, when you learn more about them, you can give more compliments to the child. And I think it was it Janet that said she had a shy child and learned that her favorite color was red. She complimented her for wearing, a red outfit. So the child the next time said, "Oh, I have red on." So, just little things that will spark their interest and get them excited and just make them feel good. And a lot of it is just very simple things like, that we discussed. And I had said that when it's their birthday, I like to give them each a book with a little card, and I bring in a little birthday bear, and I usually take their picture and then I give it to them. And little fun things like that, just to really make them feel that they're special, and let them know how we look forward to seeing them every week as a bookmate.
Anything from another group?
I also give them bookmarks, which they love.
Oh.
I have certain bookmarks I make, and then they can color them in. And whenever they read something or love something so much, then they get a little bookmark. That way everybody can get something for the rest of the class also, not just the little bookmate.
Oh, really? Oh, how nice. How lovely.
I start with compliments. The first day we meet before we read, I find something, and I usually say it, not because I'm looking for something special, but because I like their barrette, or I like the way their mother combed their hair, or I ask them, who combed your hair today? It's such a pretty style. It's just, I look for positives in my life, so I do the same with the children, and we become fast friends pretty quickly. And I was saying that they're older now, I have second graders, and so they're doing most of the reading, and they want to read for me. And so I can certainly give them praise for reading the books. They're reading more and more and bigger, and we have chapter books, so we'll finish at chapter 4 and we'll go to the following week where we left off. I keep a record of where we left off. we have a wonderful rapport, and it's about positivity mostly, about liking what they do and being able to gently correct misreading, I say, where's the R in that word? Can you show me the R? So they realize that they have to repronounce it. But it's a real positive experience.
Positive, that's, a key word, obviously, for sure. Anybody else from any group?
She, as comment she made, I find that I don't ask, what does your dad do? Because these families are often very mixed up. I always ask who lives at your house, because that kind of gives you more information about who's there. Because I've had kids that are being raised by single grandmothers, or they live with their aunt or uncle, or they're in a shelter or wherever. So, I don't ask what mom or dad does. The first thing is who lives at your house. And that
Great.
kind of gives you more insight.
Great strategy. Anybody else? Before we move on to the second group, I'd just like to pipe in with a couple of things. When you talked earlier, I think Jean, you talked about choosing books, the kid subject of the kids like. You can make a big deal about saying, I really was looking high and low today for a book, and I found just the perfect one for you. Make a big deal out of having them know that you were thinking about them at home, and that this is the book that you chose for them because you like them and you enjoy them so much. And Shirley, I think it was Shirley was talking about the getting to know, the talking that you do beforehand. Our kids, and some of you remember I was talking about this another time, kids from low-income families, there is less language. Do you remember we were talking about this? There is less language spoken in those homes than there are in more privileged homes. And by the age of 3, children in low-income homes have heard 30 million fewer words than kids, 30 million fewer words than kids in more privileged, more affluent homes. But it's not only that the kids hear less language, but the nature of the language is different. That for children to thrive, for children to believe in themselves, to think that they matter and that they're seen and they're heard, they need to experience what is called serve and return language. In other words, there's a reciprocity, there's a fluidity, there's an interactive nature to the quality of the communication. A lot of kids in low-income families, their families are so stressed that parents, just think about what's going on now. Can you imagine the stress that children are under and the families are under right now? Parents don't have the wherewithal to engage in interflowing, interactive serve and return language. And kids need that for their brains to flourish, for them to think that they matter. That's what we do. When you sit and talk with the kids just to get to know them, that's all what they need. They need that to feel that they matter. Yes, Evelyn.
I had a little girl at one time and also a little boy at different times. And they told me that they don't talk very much at home. One little boy really expressed himself fully. We don't talk very much. Because I asked, what do you talk about sometimes at dinner? Or what do you talk about when you're together with the family? We don't talk much. So I said to him, well, we're going to change that while we're here. And we didn't read too many books that year. First of all, I let him pick out the books he wanted that we'd read, which encouraged much more reading. And secondly, we talked. We just did. It's what did you do and what do you like and what did you eat and what do you think and what do you feel? And I don't know if that was particularly the right thing for a BookMate, but it felt comfortable to me. And more important than me, it felt comfortable to him.
You're doing exactly what Mrs. Flowers did. You're individuating your connection with the child to meet the needs of the child. So it's perfect.
I think we all try to do that.
That's wonderful.
Good training, Judy.
Anybody else?
Karen?
Also with what you were saying about listening to them and reciprocating what they're talking about, and I'm sure everybody does, they try to find out what the child likes, what they do. If you bring it up the following week, like saying, I know you were going to the playground, how did it work out for you? Did you get to go on the swings that you wanted to? They get so excited that you remembered. And like just in your likes and your dislikes, I will sit down and say to them, I thought of you Saturday because I made chocolate chip pancakes and I know they're your favorite. They get so excited when they know you're actually thinking about them and remembering little things that they tell you. It really does mean a lot. You were talking about that a few people ago.
That's wonderful. It means it's the whole idea that you're being seen, heard, and that you matter.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Little tiny things. Wonderful. Anybody else before we move on to the second question?
One of the things that I try to do almost every week, but sometimes it can't happen, is whatever I'm reading to them, I try to have a 1-minute project at the end for them to take home about what we've read. And that way it opens up a discussion at home. I'll give you for instance, a toilet paper roll and a popsicle stick and a groundhog cut out. They paste it on the stick, put it in. If he sees a shadow, he'll go back in. If he doesn't see his shadow, it'll be spring. And so it's an opportunity for them to tell about what they heard and open up the conversation and the words at home. Takes a half a second.
Excellent. I don't know if another group is going to talk a little bit more about activities, enrichment activities, as Audrey has just. No. That's great. I think, Audrey, I'm going to get back to your comment later on because I think it's absolutely critical what you just discussed.
Okay.
But I don't want to steal somebody else's thunder. So.
Good.
Okay. Great. Okay. Second group's question was, what specific things can you say or do to show your bookmates you respect their challenges and celebrate their strengths? That you respect their challenges and celebrate their strengths. Okay.
Well, as you said, the questions are very much related. So many of our responses and discussions were already mentioned, but I'll focus on the ones that weren't. One of our participants said that we as bookmates should share our own weaknesses and strengths to let them know that, that grown-ups also aren't perfect and we have, things that we're not so good at. If you're reading and they stumble over a word, you can say, oh, I always get that word mixed up with another word also, or something like that. So they know that it's okay to make mistakes and that grown-ups make mistakes as well. Another thing we talked about is just like they tell us how excited they are to come every week, we should share that we also are so excited to be with them every week. It's the highlight of our week, and we look forward to Tuesdays because that's the day we get to read with them, and that makes them feel good. And again, we talked about starting with a compliment, but something that's that's real and not just saying it because you want to make them feel good. They have to know it's true, that you really mean it. Also, selecting the right books again. I at the beginning we always talk to them. What do you like to do at home? After you do your homework, or and what are your favorite things? And to find books that fit in with their needs and likes. And one experience that I have, one of the little girls I read with is Hispanic, and she speaks English and Spanish. And I found a whole series of storybooks that have Spanish words interspersed in the story. And so she is teaching me to speak Spanish. And I always, whenever I come to that word, sometimes I'll try to read it and ask her, did I pronounce that correctly? Or sometimes I'll ask her to pronounce it. and she'll, sometimes she laughs because I mispronounce it, but she feels good about herself because she's teaching me something as well as, me teaching her. And so that was a really good experience. Yeah, I think that's pretty much what other people said came up in our discussion as well. Another, one of the little boys I pick up, we have to walk from the classroom to the room where we read, and it's a bit of a walk, and I'll always take that opportunity to ask him, how was your week since I saw you last? Did you do anything exciting? Did you get to go out in the snow? Did you visit with your cousins? And that always makes for discussion and, shows that we're interested in their life beyond the half hour that we spend with them. So I think, that's another thing that's good for the kids.
Excellent. Thank you. And anything else from that group?
I think that Spanish English thing is an amazing find. One of the things that I found that the kids can always do better than me are the I Spy books. They always find the stuff before me. So if you're looking for something that the kids can do better than you, there's a tip.
That's a great idea. Yeah, I don't see anything in the I Spy.
And it's true.
But they're yes, terrific. Yes.
What Beverly was saying about adults make mistakes too, or I have things that I'm afraid of. It's actually one of your books, Judy, The Roller Coaster. And when we read it, they'll say, I'm not afraid. I'll say, well, I am afraid of roller coasters. And it gets them to do, well, you have to be brave and you have to do this. And I say, oh, that's an interesting way of thinking about it. Maybe I'll try that next time. Of course, I'll never be caught dead on a roller coaster, but that's besides the point. But it makes them feel so good.
Well, thank you. I love this whole idea of structuring things so that they do better than you. I do this weird thing that I ask them to be the teacher, and I read a book and I deliberately make mistakes, and then they correct me, and it's so powerful because they're seeing themselves as officially the teacher, and I ham it up completely. I go, and they just it's a wonderful role reversal, because how many times in life do kids feel as though they have power, not that they're the ones in charge? Not a whole lot. And so we're trying to dismantle feelings of disempowerment in children. And so artificially constructing something where they are in the position of power and that they're correcting the adult in a safe environment has been really a helpful strategy with me, very much so. And the other thing is, we were talking about praise. I learned early on, and I think some of you kind of got to this too, that children who don't feel good about themselves, well, we all have trouble accepting compliments and praise, don't we? We always deflect it. I mean, I know, don't you? We're not great accepting compliments and praise for the most part. We tend to diffuse it. Children particularly will do so if they have kind of low self-image, if they don't have a great deal of faith in themselves. So that effusive global praise, oh, you're such a great reader. I see head shaking. You know what I'm saying. They can't integrate it. They can't accept it. It's too much at variance with who they think they are. But if you provide very specific praise, wow, you turned the page at exactly the right moment, good for you, then that's something that they can glom onto that. They can assimilate that and move it into a stronger sense of self and identity. Audrey.
Sometimes I take a mirror that has to do with a lesson, and we look at, they don't always get a chance to see themselves in a mirror, especially their faces. And so if a book has anything to do with identity or whatever, I think that a mirror is a very,
That's great. That's great. Yeah. I mean, there are whole therapies for adults that involve mirrors. And do you remember years ago there was on Saturday Night Live, it was Al Franken did I'm so old, probably none of you know what I'm talking about. He did a whole thing where he was like a self-help guru, and he was looking into a mirror and telling himself how wonderful he was. This, like a mantra of self-affirmation that was absolutely hysterical. But but there's some validity in all that. That's what affirmations are all about, and affirmations can be really powerful in terms of reversing one's sense of oneself and one's capabilities. Okay, anybody else for group number 2 like to make any ideas? Set forth any ideas? Okay, that brings us to the third group's question, which was, what specific things can you say or do to show your bookmates you believe in them and their ability to achieve? You believe in them and their ability to achieve. Getting back to, I can't remember who had said it, used the word having faith, that you have faith in the child. So I'd love to hear what you have to say here.
Well, that was our group. And again, a lot of the things have already been discussed, the positive feedback, the compliments, opening them up in the beginning before you even sit down for your book, to have that give and take makes them ready to be more responsive. Make sure that they know there is no right or wrong. If you ask them a question, it's their opinion and you value their opinion. It was also brought up that you should know their ability. Some of these kindergartners are very young and they're better at opening up flaps and things like that to keep them engaged. So know their ability so that they can feel that they have achieved something, that if they open up the flap, it's the right animal that's supposed to go to the right feeding dish. So if you know their ability, they feel better that they can achieve. If you're reading a story to them, ask for their help, no matter what level they're on. If maybe it's a word that they would know, or if it's a younger child, a sound. If the train is going by, can you make the sound of the train? So that they are a part of everything that you're doing and they're helping you along with your lesson. There's different phrases you can use if you're asking them a question, especially with the older children. Like, that's an interesting way of looking at it. I haven't thought of that. You really have given me something to think about. If you're discussing the book and what might happen next and they bring up something, I mean, these kids have amazing imaginations. Tell them that. Tell them their imagination is amazing. And I can't wait to find out what happens if you have the better ending or if the book has the better ending. Or sometimes they're right on point. All this goes to their feeling of achievement, we thought. We had a nice discussion.
Great. You all have had wonderful discussions.
Yeah.
And anything else from the group? Thank you. Can I just add a couple of quick things? Do you have patience for a couple of quick things?
Sure.
What we're really talking about with our kids is working on trying to bring about an attitudinal shift, a feeling of I can do it, I am capable, I am competent, I do have future possibilities before me, that I do have a future. Sometimes it's hard to imagine that they do, but they do. And we're trying to make them feel that they can tackle life. And do you remember sometimes at several different programs, I've talked about the work of Angela Duckworth at the University of Pennsylvania. And she has talked about what gives kids a sense of agency and power over their own lives, what develops in them a sense of inner competence. And she talks about, as do many educators, the importance of developing opportunities for children to demonstrate mastery. And much of what you've been talking about now in the third group is exactly that, strategies and techniques and approaches to help kids feel that they can do, that they can accomplish. I found early on a tiny little technique that has turned out to be really helpful with me. particularly with kids who are so weighed down by feelings of inner insufficiency, is that I have a little teeny checklist that I bring in each time of maybe 3 things that we're going to do together. And as they do each thing, they have the opportunity to check off what they've done. And I've made it good for you. That's a great accomplishment. Look at what you achieved today. I deliberately use those upper level vocabulary words to reinforce the sense of accomplishment and mastery that they're evidencing, even if it's something really, really simple that they've done. And I can't tell you what a turnaround for some kids. I don't use it with all kids, but for some kids that has been such a turnaround. So much so that some of you have heard me tell this incident, this anecdote, or another time. I was working with a little girl, Rebecca, who was as sweet and a darling little child, but she was very passive. And she was so hard to fire up. And I think some of you probably have had kids like that. And when I started using the checklist, it was just so exciting for her to check off those items. And one day, and she said to me, I plished a lot today. And I was thoroughly confused what she was saying, particularly because she had just come back from the girls' room. And I thought she was giving me more information than I needed. You know what she was saying?
Accomplished.
I accomplished. And then even better than that, although that cracked me up completely, she ran down the hall waving her checklist, her completed checklist. And it was lunchtime, and so all the lunch ladies were out. Look what I did, look what I did, look what I did. This simple little checklist enabled her to see herself differently as somebody who got things done. And I saw a turnaround in her. So you might want to think about checklists. And then the other thing that I thought I'd get back to was Audrey's nifty idea about the toilet paper roll and the groundhog and the taking it home so that there would be something to talk about afterwards with their parents. And that it might be an extension activity related to the theme or the ideas or whatever in the book. And you know, those of you who sat in on some of my sessions, you know I talk about the importance of doing even a tiny bit of writing as often as you can with the session. And I see some heads, shaking yes. And it might just be a little tiny sentence underneath the drawing that they did of their favorite character in the book. I emphasize the importance of writing so much for so many reasons. First of all, there's obviously such a relationship between reading and writing. You're good in one, you're better than the other, et cetera, et cetera. But it's even more than that. I know, having taught in college, having taught graduate students, having taught business executives, they hate nothing more than writing. Most people hate to write. And I see lots of heads being shaken. And there's a lot of anxiety for many, many people, even more, the studies show, even more than in public speaking, which is really interesting. So that if as adults, we have anxiety attached to writing. I'm a professional writer. I do not like writing in some ways. It really is scary. It is something inherently intimidating about having to put words on paper that have to go public. So I think if that's how adults feel, why not try to nip that in the bud when kids are little, when they're already dealing with so many feelings of, oh my gosh, I can't do this, and give them opportunities for feelings of mastery around the whole act of writing. And so, for instance, if for kids who are really afraid to write, it's the act of going public and the permanence of writing that's so scary for most people. Just use a whiteboard, and you can get them for $1 at the dollar store. and then the kid writes something. If there's a mistake, they just write it, they just wipe it away, so that there's not that permanent failure of a permanent record of failure that they have to deal with as they're writing on. Oh my God, it is utterly pouring here. The other thing is, since kids are nervous about writing, giving them opportunities, small structured opportunities where they really can't go wrong, is such a wonderful tool of empowerment. So you can do them, you can have them write, like, I am proud that I can tie my shoes. What else are you proud of? I am proud that I can make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. I am proud that I can tell time. I am proud that I can make my bed. And they can do a little booklet or just a little tiny drawing of each of those things. And so they have an opportunity to demonstrate to themselves that they are accomplished, that they did learn to tie their shoes. That's to be celebrated. That they did learn to tell time. That's to be celebrated. That they did learn to make their bed. That's to be celebrated. So it gives them an opportunity to see themselves as people who can do and can master. And the last thing I just want to say quickly before the storm makes all our lights go out again. When kids write something, even if it's one sentence, you read it to them and ham it up like crazy what they wrote. So, I tied my shoes. I learned to tell time, so that they hear not only what they've written and how you've embellished it and made it sound so significant, this little tiny task that they've done, so they have a chance to see themselves and hear through and see through somebody else's eyes that what they've done really are accomplishments. And it's teeny little things go such a long way with investing children with a sense of they can do, that they do have a sense of power, that there is a world of possibilities that they are capable of holding on to. So I guess is there anything else that anybody would like to add?
Hi, I was just going to say I really enjoy these Zoom programs. They're really terrific. So thank you for doing this.
Well, thank you for coming here. I said to Rhonda, I'm so verklempt, by all that you folks are doing. I mean, it's just, and how deeply committed you are to what you're doing, and again, the time is such a troubled time that we're all living through. And hopefully we can get back to our little bookmates soon. And because what you do, and this is what we're seeing over and over again, it's anything but just a warm, fuzzy intervention. It has such transformative potential. And getting back kind of to Maya Angelou's work, there is a kind of resurrection quality in what we're doing. And I applaud you for all of it. Bravo to all of you.
Thank you, Judy. Thank you, Judy, for coming.
Well,
thank you, Rhonda, for making it possible.
Thanks, Rhonda.
Thank you, Judy. It's my first time seeing you, and you were a wonderful presenter.
Oh, well, thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, bye. Everybody stay safe. Hope that you don't lose your power.
Thanks, everyone.
Rhonda,
Bye.
Thank you.